Stormy Daniels had a tough time on the stand. The question got ugly.
Yeah, I think the cross-examination was pretty aggressive with her, but she dealt with him very openly and directly.
Stormy Daniels is finding some peace after Trump's conviction on 34 felony counts. She was really intimidated by some actions from the Trump team. It was a jaw-dropping moment for her when the verdict against Trump came in. Stormy Daniels' lawyer, Clark Brewster, shared her struggles in this case.
Stormy's doing better. When the verdict broke on Thursday, we talked. I was the first to speak with her. And, it was just a culmination of so many things and so many feelings. She got quite emotional about it.
Any hopes porn star. Stormy Daniels had of a quiet life with her fourth husband, fellow adult film performer Barrett Blade, and their horses on a Florida ranch have vanished. A Manhattan grand jury found Donald Trump guilty over a $130,000 hush money payment to Daniels, complicating the 2024 election. Trump is the first former president to be convicted of a crime, found guilty on all 34 counts. He now faces possible jail time due to his convictions, with sentencing scheduled for July 11th, just 4 days before the Republican National Convention, where he is expected to receive the party's presidential nomination.
The 34 guilties, notwithstanding the fact that we may have expected it to happen, the reality of it was a bit of a jolt for her. But she's doing well. She's dealing with it. I mean, she's got inundated with.
Trump denied having any sexual encounters with either woman or any knowledge of the hush payment, and he harshly criticized Juan Merchan, the judge overseeing the case. This was a rigged and disgraceful trial, he stated after the verdict. We didn't do anything wrong. I'm completely innocent. Our entire country is being manipulated right now. This has also brought Stormy Daniels' story of that night in July 2006 back into the public eye. Here is how her lawyer views her.
I mean, she is a very strong, smart, careful thinking woman, frankly. She's pretty impressive. I've represented her now for 5 years, and I've seen a lot of different...
Sitting just feet away from Trump, Daniels provided a detailed and at times explicit account of a sexual encounter she claims occurred with Trump in Nevada in 2006. After meeting at a celebrity golf tournament, she said Trump invited her to dinner, but instead brought her to his hotel room, surprising her by stripping down to his underwear while she was in the bathroom. I felt the room spin in slow motion. I felt the blood basically leave my hands and my feet, Daniels testified. I just thought, oh my God, what did I misread to get here? Because the intention was pretty clear. Somebody stripped down in their underwear and posing on the bed, like waiting for you.
And when I opened the bathroom door to come out, Mr. Trump had come into the bedroom and was on the bed, basically between myself and the exit.
What was he wearing at the time?
His boxer shorts and t-shirt.
What was your reaction to seeing him like that?
Daniels said Trump did not physically threaten her, but my own insecurities in that moment kept me from saying no. Daniels said she kept in touch with Trump for about a year in hopes of appearing on his TV show, The Apprentice, but it never happened. Daniels testified about accepting $15,000 for a magazine interview in 2011. Although the story wasn't published then, it eventually surfaced on a gossip website without her consent. Her lawyer, after consulting with Cohen, managed to get the story taken down. In 2016, Daniels authorized her manager to try selling her story again, but found little interest until the infamous Access Hollywood recording of Trump bragging about grabbing women without their permission was released. Daniels told the jury she accepted $130,000 from Cohen in the final weeks of the election in exchange for a legal agreement to keep her claim private.
She took the position, really at the request of the prosecution months ago, not to do any interviews because they didn't want to impact in any way the trial, so she chose not to. And she thought while the jury was deliberating the same thing, she wanted it to be,
Trump's lawyers intensely questioned Daniels about her motivations, getting her to admit that she dislikes the former Republican president. She rejected the defense's claim that she fabricated her story, stating, "If it was fiction, I would have written it to be a lot better." Daniels' testimony was highly anticipated in the trial. Although she had shared her story previously, this was the first time she testified in front of Trump. Trump's lawyers frequently objected to Daniels' testimony and twice requested a mistrial, arguing that her feelings of a power imbalance with Trump and her direct answers about the alleged sexual encounter should not have been presented to the jury.
Represented Stormy now since 19, so more than 5 years, and I've seen her in a lot of different settings. She's incredibly bright and she's resilient, but she was rocked by this a bit.
Let's look back at her background to know how she ended up being with Trump. Daniels kickstarted her career as a dancer in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, landing her first gig at a strip club when she was just 17 after being persuaded to do a guest set. "I made more money in 2 songs than I did all week, answering phones at the writing stable where I worked," she later recounted to the New York Times. From grueling 11-hour shifts that stretched into the early hours, she quickly rose to headline shows across the state, eventually transitioning into the adult film industry, first as a performer, then as a writer and director. Known for her exacting standards, she wasn't afraid to fire underperformers, and once demanded that an actor change his dumb stage name. But as long as her involvement in the court matters, she isn't dumb at all. Beyond adult films, Daniels made appearances in mainstream movies like the 2000s rom-com, The 40-Year-Old Virgin, and Knocked Up. Director Judd Apatow, who worked with her on both films, remembered her as a very serious businesswoman and filmmaker, cautioning against underestimating her. In 2009, Daniels toyed with the idea of running for the U.S. Senate in Louisiana, following a prostitution scandal involving the incumbent. She aligned herself with the Republican Party and proposed the campaign's slogan, "Screwing people honestly." However, she ultimately withdrew from the race. Still, it brought her a lot of stress in the end.
I think a lot of the things she said about that stemmed from the attack upon her that she saw daily. I mean, physical threats, things like that. And the fact that he was so harsh and critical of her appearance and her intellect. And so, you know, that spurred some of that. But
Here are the details about the famous golf course encounter. Trump, then a flamboyant entrepreneur and star of NBC's The Apprentice, crossed paths with the 27-year-old Daniels at a celebrity golf tournament in Nevada. He had ventured there alone, leaving behind his third wife, Melania, and their newborn son, Barron. Trump and Daniels met again later that day in the gift room and were photographed together at the booth for her porn studio, Wicked Pictures. He invited her to dinner at his penthouse suite at the lavish Harrah's Lake Tahoe Hotel and Casino, an offer she accepted. Daniels showed up in a dazzling gold dress and strappy heels, while he lounged in black silk pajamas and slippers.
And tell us what you recall about getting dressed.
Sitting on the end of the bed, noticing that it was completely dark outside now, and that it was really hard to get my shoes on. My hands were shaking so hard. I had on they were strappy gold heels with little tiny buckles.
Was it just to impress you? To try to sleep with you? A reporter from In Touch Weekly magazine later inquired. "Yeah," Daniels replied, "and I guess it worked." Following this, they reportedly slept together. Daniels stated that he kept in touch, referring to her as Honey Bunch, and they met a couple more times, though they didn't engage in further intimate encounters. It might have ended there if not for Trump's ultimately unsuccessful decision to run for president in 2011. But the Honey Bunch felt so hurt because of this encounter.
I can tell you right now, as we got close to the date that she was to come to New York, she just became paralyzed with fear. Not of testifying, or not the anxiety that we would normally expect a witness that's going to get on the stand.
In return for $15,000, Daniels granted an interview about that evening to In Touch Weekly. However, Trump's fixer Michael Cohen caught wind of it and warned the magazine of potential legal action. Consequently, the article never saw the light of day, and Daniels never received payment. Fast forward to 2016, she attempted to sell the story once more. This time, with Trump on the brink of winning the election, the stakes were raised. Once again, Cohen intervened, this time offering her $130,000 in exchange for signing a non-disclosure agreement. Michael Cohen highlights her role in the case in this way.
It was a very poor decision to go after her. People don't know unless you've read her book. She's actually wickedly smart. I think she graduated valedictorian of her high school class. She's much smarter than they are.
Daniels signed her copy of the agreement on the trunk of a car near a porn set in California, while Cohen signed on behalf of Trump. Despite some delay, Cohen eventually used his own funds to make the payment, a decision that would later lead to his imprisonment. However, Trump is alleged to have directed the payment and signed checks to reimburse Cohen after assuming the presidency. Ultimately, the money was spent in vain. The story surfaced 2 years later in 2018 when Daniels sued Trump to nullify the NDA, and In Touch Weekly published the tell-all article.
there was a point in time, if you were in the courtroom, where Judge Merchan called up the defense and said, "Why aren't you objecting?" And there was 2 or 3 occasions during her testimony without an objection for the defense where he said, "Sustained." He interposed the objection for
Do you think
them.
they were trying to...
Midway through her testimony, Trump's lawyers requested a mistrial. Defense attorney Todd Blanche argued that Daniels' testimony about the alleged encounter and subsequent meetings was irrelevant to the case and would unfairly influence the jury. The judge denied the motion. criticizing the defense for not raising more objections during her testimony. Prior to Daniels taking the stand, Trump's lawyers had attempted to block her from discussing the details of the encounter, claiming it was irrelevant to a case about books and records. Prosecutors argued that Daniels' testimony was crucial to understanding what Trump was attempting to conceal, and assured they were careful to avoid excessive graphic details. Before Daniels testified, they informed the judge that her testimony would be really basic and would not involve any details of genitalia.
You look at this and think about how the jury may be viewing this in particular. She does tell a powerful part of the story to suggest why there would be an incentive to silence her. Yes, absolutely.
Trump's lawyers aimed to undermine Daniels' credibility, suggesting she was driven by financial motives and that her story had changed over time. Am I correct that you hate President Trump? Defense lawyer Susan Nichels asked Daniels. Daniels acknowledged that she did. And you want him to go to jail? Nichels continued. I want him to be held accountable, Daniels responded. When pressed if that meant going to jail, she added, if he's convicted. The defense also highlighted that Daniels owes Trump hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees from an unsuccessful defamation lawsuit, and mentioned a 2022 tweet where she stated she would go to jail before I pay a penny. Despite the intense questioning, Daniels stood firm, adamantly denying any attempt to extort Trump.
It's not as natural as it would be on cross because you're responding to leading questions and insinuating questions. So I knew Storm would shine on the cross.
On appeal, Trump's lawyers are likely to argue that Daniels' testimony about the Lake Tahoe hotel encounter went into excessive detail for a case focused on whether Trump falsified documents, rather than on whether he had sex with Daniels. On May 7th, Daniels testified that she hit Trump's backside with a rolled-up magazine and that he did not use a condom. She described the position they were in and mentioned that she blacked out and couldn't recall how her clothes came off, despite not consuming alcohol or drugs and never saying no to Trump during the encounter.
I tweeted about his being indicted, yes. And people wanted to ask how they could support me, so I tweeted the link to my store.
You have an online store where you sell merchandise, right?
Sure.
I want to show you what has been marked as J22, please.
Defense lawyer Todd Blanche requested a mistrial twice based on her testimony, claiming it prejudiced the 12-member jury. How can we come back from this in a way that's fair to President Trump? Blanche asked outside the jury's presence on May 7th. The judge denied both requests, noting that Blanche had claimed in his April 22nd opening statement that Daniels' account of the encounter was false, which entitled prosecutors to elicit testimony to establish her credibility. But here's the alternative.
I've done is wrong. I understand, and goes and tells the court why punishment shouldn't be as harsh as the court might otherwise do. His mantra thus far is to condemn and attack and insult. I don't think that'll work well in the allocution, so we'll see what happens.
Rebecca Roife, a professor at New York Law School and former prosecutor with the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, commented that none of Judge Merchan's decisions stood out as obvious mistakes, reducing the chances of Trump's lawyers getting the conviction overturned. I can't imagine an appeals court would say the newspaper spanking warrants a reversal, Roife said. Share your thoughts about Trump's appeal against the verdict in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe for the latest updates on Trump's legal battle and politics. See you in the next video.